No, we haven't. I mean, throughout the history of Dethklok, they've always had like a really contentious relationship with their fans. They've always been irritated by their own popularity,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a funny thing because the fan and band dynamic is a tricky relationship, especially and the movie is about that too. There's a little bit of that in there too about where were we when this show started and where are we now? The only thing I can think that Deathcock would call their fans are some kind of horrible insults like dildos or something like that, but we don't really have a
Dildos.
nickname other than yeah, exactly.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. Today I'm being joined by one of my personal favorites, Mr. Brendon Small of Dethklok. How you doing, brother?
Good. That's nice of you to say. It's nice to be here, and I like your shirt too, by the way.
So it's not really a death shirt, even though I do
It's a
love
death.
death.
Yeah.
It's death becomes her.
Oh, it's a nice mashup
Yeah.
between movie and film. I like that too. And by the way, that movie is hilarious.
Oh yeah, I recently rewatched it. I showed it to my wife. She'd never seen it, and yeah, it's hilarious. It's like trippy. They don't make movies like quite like that anymore.
No, it's a really interesting kind of magical dark comedy, and it's got Meryl Streep, who is great, and it's got Bruce Willis and
Meg Ryan.
and
Oh,
Goldie
Goldie
Hawn, right?
Hawn. Goldie
Goldie
Hawn.
Hawn,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Goldie Hawn. And there's some really kind of like at the time those VFX, those visual effects, and all those practical effects were a really big deal, like being able to see through her body and all
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff. So yeah, anyway, I really do I like movies. I like comedies. I like dark comedies. They're all fun.
Hell yeah. I mean, that you yourself direct, create, produce, write, act, all of the things in movies and animation and also music. You have so much going on, man.
There's a lot of stuff happening. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty bonkers.
How are you feeling right now with, I'll get to all of it. I'll describe it to
Yeah,
everyone,
yeah,
but how
yeah,
are you
sure.
feeling right now in the middle of this, like, also literal hurricane that's about to hit California for the first
I
time
know.
ever?
I know. It's all very crazy. Yeah, we're gonna, I think, start our rehearsals on day one of, Hurricane Hillary. So, yeah, this is like this whole thing is like 3 years in the making, and I realized that I'll probably relax and rest when I'm on the road because it's been kind of nonstop, this whole thing. But at the same time, that's the most fun I have is making this stuff, being kind of scared of it, going to sleep with it in my mind, thinking of it as a gigantic puzzle that needs to be solved and trying to utilize every second of the day to get it to where it needs to be. So that's part of it. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to break out of the office and go be on the road because I have been indoors looking at a computer screen or screen sharing for the better part of 3 years. So I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited just to get the only thing I'm thinking about right now is just get my gear over to the studio where we're going to rehearse, and then everything just kind of falls in place. That's the cool thing about a tour is you've got this great team with you, from the band to the text to the tour management team, all working for the same goal, and it's a pretty fun one, which is Metalocalypse. We get to go on tour, we get to be funny, we also get to be brutal, and I get to kind of have my cake and eat it, where I get to be a part of a band, but also kind of be off in the shadows at the same time and not make it about me. So it's kind of to me the ultimate place to be.
Hell yeah, hell yeah! You've got, like you said, a tour coming up with Baby Metal, which is huge. The BabyKlok Tour. Uh,
Yeah,
you've got two albums coming. The soundtrack for the
yeah.
upcoming movie. That's another thing. The movie and the soundtrack
Hmm.
for that movie. Another Dethalbum IV. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
you. I mean, I guess like you said, you've had 3 years to kind of build all this up and get it bubbling. I mean, I'm assuming, it's been 3 years since the pandemic, but I'm assuming throughout that whole time period, you were just locked inside, working on all this. And even before that.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole project kind of started in 2019, when I got a call from Adult Swim saying, "Hey, how would you like to bring Death Clock back on stage for one night?" and this is 2019, and they had this festival, this Adult Swim festival, where we're on stage, and there are a lot of cool acts on stage, but none of them are heavy metal acts. We had like Flying Lotus and Captain Murphy and
Run the
Thundercat, just
Jewels.
yeah, and Run the Jewel. Oh yeah, that was another one. So that was the last year, but this is the 2019
Oh, okay.
one. Um, yeah, so it was really cool, but I knew, I think I kind of knew that if we kind of landed this show, this one-off in 2019, I kind of got the feeling that that was going to kick the door open to be able to wrap up this whole big narrative of Metalocalypse, and that's what happened. So the show went off nicely. It was it was well received, and this offer was made. What do you think? Can we make another Dethklok record? Can we make another tour? Can we do another movie? Can we go on tour afterwards? And then I kind of added in the soundtrack of the movie because I thought this is an opportunity. I love film score. I love composers. I love what the right film score does for a movie, and so I really want to make that part of the component too. That component part of the big kind of structured deal. And so yeah, I sat there and you know during the pandemic and started kind of took out my notes from way back when about what this project was supposed to be and wanted to honor that. And then demoing songs, demoing score, and you're kind of just constantly when you kind of hit a wall with one, you're pivoting to the next thing. So you're always working and always building the world out from the script to Dethklok to the score. So I'm always just pivoting and always keeping my interest somewhere new, and that helps you kind of slowly build. It's almost like when you see like those 3D printers. You're just like building little parts, and then you finally look back and you got the whole structure in front of you.
True. Yeah, yeah. That's awesome, man. I mean, I've seen you guys live before, and it's a production.
Yeah,
It's not just you guys up there performing. I mean, there's animation that goes with it too. I mean, we're assuming
yeah,
we're gonna get new animation. Is it part of the movie that you're gonna be playing, or is it
yeah. You're gonna
just
get well. It's funny. I think about this, and I think about this tour, and I think about a band that has not been touring that often, only doing a couple one-offs, right, in
mm,
the last 10 years. So I think what we're doing here is a celebration of the entire series. So we're gonna definitely you're gonna make sure you're gonna get classic stuff and you're gonna get some new stuff folded in the right amount. I think where you're not forcing an audience to understand something they don't know yet. I think there's like something that happens where a band plays too much of the new record and the audience is like, we haven't learned this yet, but
right?
we know the old stuff. So I always think there's a real balance between all these people that left their house and wanted to come here. How do you measure that out? So I sit there with my team. I sit there with Gene Hoglan. In fact, I was screen sharing with him earlier, just in articulating the show, like which goes where. Do you have enough time from this song to start the next song? We look at a whole Premiere timeline, which is an editing software, and we discern what we think is the most important thing. And then if someone disagrees with me, we all hear each other out and we go, okay, wait, hold on. Now you got a point. Maybe we switch these two here and we do this over there. So we're always kind of shape shifting and we're trying to make something that is both for the people that have never seen us and something for the people that have seen us before. But ultimately, the feeling of the show is you should feel like you're in an amusement park ride, like the Terminator 2 ride, like Universal Studios or something that's a little bit more exciting than a show. Those shows are very exciting on their own, depending on who's playing them. But something a little bit newer, and a little bit just a different feeling when you go into a concert hall and watch us. So we have a movie theater size screen that plays animation, and it's completely synced up with the drummer because Gene has a click track running to his headset, and he's kind of conducting the whole show from the drum kit, and he is a crucial part of how the show lands.
Nice, man. Yeah, I actually saw you guys with Mastodon, the shirt you're wearing,
Yeah,
and Converge, and
yeah,
my ex, which let me tell you, it wasn't the reason that she's my ex, but it was pretty close.
yeah,
She when we were already late for the show, and we were
yeah,
running from the parking lot. I'm like, I can't miss Converge, I can't miss Converge,
yeah,
and
yeah.
she stops before we got to the venue. She's like, I need to eat something. We miss Converge completely.
Oh,
Yeah, and we got in like at the second song of Mastodon. I was like, I hate you. Like, this is not gonna work out. Sorry, you do not understand the importance.
Yeah. Arrive having eaten. That could have solved every problem. Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. Let me ask you, like, did you ever consider at one point before doing live shows for Dethklok, doing it in cosplay, like coming out with the long black wig and the shirt or whatever?
Yeah, that's funny. I never thought that that was going to be something that the audience would ever buy because I don't ever the way that this works and the way that I think of this is that I physically have nothing to do with this project. In fact, if you see my face on like a tweet that has anything to do with this thing, I'm always you can guarantee that I've said, please replace me with the character. I'm nothing. I'm the guy behind the scenes. I'm not. You shouldn't be noticing me. Like if I do my job right, I'm in the shadows.
Yeah.
So so I thought, that's for somebody else to do to like put together a Dethklok cosplay band. But for me, our job is really simple. I always say this to the band. I say, we're not Dethklok, but we sound exactly like them because we make the sounds of Dethklok. And we're not Dethklok. I always joke that we're the Metalocalypse players. And Dethklok is seriously a figment of our collective imagination at this point. And so therefore, I think it's about really getting the sound right and getting the right players to really nail that sound. And having Gene, having Neely Brosh, and having Brian Beller and Pete Griffin on board this tour is the move that I need to make to just get the sound right and we have visual right, and then everything else is like it's a celebration of the series. So those people that have made this show some kind of a part of their life, that's who this show is for.
Yeah, me specifically. Like I gotta
Yeah,
tell you,
maybe. Yeah, maybe you. Yeah.
yeah. It's always been I felt connected because metalheads don't really get much representation in animation or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
Yeah, like and it lends itself well. Like you look, you see a lot of music videos that with killer animation from bands that over the years. I mean, you yourself directed some that are awesome. So it definitely is something that makes me happy to see it back. It's interesting to see this like revival from Adult Swim. Like they recently got back on board with Aqua Teen. They brought them back. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
slowly starting to realize like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have canceled all these things.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, everything's crazy, and I don't pretend to understand any of it because it's above my pay grade. Because my job is to come up with an idea and try to see it through, and to think, like a fan of heavy metal, because I am, and that's why this show, I think is from the very beginning of it, I knew that there was some kind of a responsibility to get a lot of this stuff right, because, like you said, the world of heavy metal and the community doesn't really get spoken to that often. So how do you try to get it right? And because there's that judge inside of my head, that kind of frowny face guy with the folded arms, that's like always naysaying, going like, yeah, that's the heavy metal guy. Definitely lives inside of my head, and I have to kind of pay attention to that person. And go, you're right. We got to make sure that person's very much appeased, and then we earn the right to do this show, because I thought always someone's going to make a show like this, and I think they're going to get it wrong,
Mm.
and I want to get it right, and I want to make the music something that can be, stand on its own, and I want to make the characters, each one of them, have enough personality where you go, oh wow, look, there's a whole world of characters, because the shows I grew up watching have really strong characters. When I
Yeah.
was like learning how to write, I was watching Seinfeld and stuff back in the 90s, and I love Seinfeld because their characters were so distinctive. You knew each one of them so intimately that you gotta they it felt like you were friends with them. And that's what I think TV is also, is this kind of friendship surrogate. And each week we feel like we're going on a date with the audience, and we're saying, before I see you next week, I want to give you enough information where you think about us.
Yeah. Yeah. So the show Friends was so successful. It was literally in the
I know,
title of the show. Like,
seriously, yeah.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is part of I think, the psychology of television,
Yeah.
a
Giving
connection to
somebody, yeah.
something.
Yeah, that's why you have the reruns. That's why everywhere if I don't watch TV anymore, but if you go
Yeah.
anywhere where there is a television program playing in the background, it's just reruns of old shows because it's that familiarity, that friend, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do it too. I have shows that are comfort shows. I watch The Sopranos all the time. I watch The Sopranos all the time because I think it's a gorgeously crafted show in so many different ways. But it also reveals something new to me each viewing, and I see something that the actor did that, I go, oh, I didn't never notice that subtle thing. That guy knew she was going to say that, and he was ready for it because he knows whatever. You get into this kind of like the minutia of the whole thing, and it's kind of fun to study it, and it's also comforting.
Yeah, no, you guys knocked it out of the park, honestly, with the whole series. And like you said, the characters are all distinct. And not only do you represent the, brutal, violent nature of metal, but also the truth behind it all. Because a lot of people misinterpret, like they look at me out and about and they're like, oh, this guy's angry or satanic or whatever. They
Hmm.
don't realize that I'm a teddy bear and like people like, even George Corpse Grinder, who's like going
I
around
know, yeah,
collecting teddy bears. Like, we have the
I know.
softer side, we have the comedy side. Like it's not just the one note of violence or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's also the reason to come back and do this movie too, because this is the final statement on, the subject matter and the thesis from episode one and episode two. So, and that's why it's so nice after all this time to finally put a bow on it, to land the bird, to really kind of get this other side of heavy metal kind of in there too. So you'll see with the movie that it is the culmination. It's a little bit more character driven, and it's a little bit more kind of a statement than anything we've done. And it has to be big, and it has to be epic, and it has to be bombastic, and it has to be dire, and it has to be a little bit more glorious and a little bit more cinematic than anything we've done before. And so that's kind of what we have in store for the Army of the Doomstar movie.
Yeah, the Army of the Doomstars. When is that releasing again? I should
That
have this.
drops It drops next week, August 22nd, and then
Ooh.
also next week, I think the 25th is when Dethalbum 4, or maybe it's the opposite. Dethalbum 4 is the 22nd, and the movie's the 25th, but it all happens next week. You'll see it. I know that uh, Blu-rays have already shipped, and by the way, I talk about Blu-rays, and I'm so happy that this thing came out on Blu-ray because in the current state of streaming, you never know if your stuff's going to disappear or it's going to come back, and even stuff you bought, the license can expire and you may not have access to it anymore. But when you have physical, and I'm a cinephile, I love movies, so I'm always collecting like Blu-rays or 4Ks or whatever it is because they look better, they sound better. And I have a 5.1 system, and we really mixed this movie in 5.1 and tried to utilize everything in the channels to give you an experiential kind of to give you like a more just a better cinematic experience, let's say, when watching at home.
Yeah, I appreciate having a physical thing in my hand. I was going to ask you. That's
Yeah,
actually one of my questions. Like, where are you at? Because when the show started, we weren't really in this full-on streaming world. We were still getting Blu-rays and
right.
DVD collections. You had the whole
Yeah,
season on one DVD collection. I mean, I
yeah,
myself, I have like hundreds and hundreds of vinyl that and
yeah,
and we live in LA where it's like any day
yeah,
now the big one hits, and which records am I taking with me? Because I can't carry
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
thousands of them, but it still feels nice to grab a record and put it on the record player. It feels nice to put
Oh yeah.
a movie on, and not
It's
just click click.
ritualistic, yeah. I mean, there's something kind of there's a nice ritual in playing a record.
Yeah.
And like you set up a time to listen. You make time for something that you value, which is obviously music.
Yeah.
And that's also what this project is about the power of music. Where would we be if we hadn't discovered heavy metal?
Yeah.
It's a scary idea.
Now, do you feel that perhaps if this everything that you're planning is successful, the movie does well, the vinyl does well, the tour goes well, that this might reignite a fire to get you to do more, like more Metalocalypse stuff, or is the story over?
Well, I will say that this is the end of the Metalocalypse story, and there could be a new story that happens. And I'm very much open to it. We'll see. This is a crazy thing. Again, I'm in a very lucky position in that I've gotten to find a place where we get to be creative on our own terms, and we get to make music on our own terms, and we get to tour and connect with people. And that doesn't happen that often. It's very rare. The thing is, because in this world where it's art and commerce, Are you just making content for somebody, or are you making a piece that you really think you need to make, you know? And that's what I always feel. I only want to do stuff that I think I'm compelled to make because I have a hard time getting excited about something that I'm just doesn't move the needle for me. Dethklok will always like be something that I think about doing something with, whether or not I can, you know. And but this is also something that's part of the industry. Is you need other people's money. You need a network's money. You need to like it's like getting, you know, nowadays you don't need a label really to get your music out. You can just put it out on your own. They may have an advertising budget, but you're ultimately the one that's spending it. If you make any money, it's going to just be recouped anyway. So this is part of the whole thing. How do you find somebody's money? How do you get them to leave you alone creatively? And how do you let that connect with the audience? This is a pretty strong audience. It's the only way. It's the only reason we're here today is because people continued, even though it wasn't in production, people continued watching it, and the metrics showed the the ultimate truth was there is that you've got proof that people are interested in this, and so that's what got everyone talking.
Yeah. Do you?
And as long as there's a fun challenge too, you know, then
Yeah.
I'm interested. You know, this is a good challenge. I wanted to make a movie, you
Yeah.
know, something that felt like a real movie,
Yeah.
and
You're
I wanted
challenging
to.
yourself a lot. It's a movie, a tour,
It's a
and
lot,
two albums. It's a lot of
I know,
challenging.
and the tour is the final challenge, and then I get to sleep. Oh, it'll be nice.
Do you have a nickname for your fans? Like, bands, they give little nicknames, like Slipknot has the maggots and whatnot.
No, we haven't. I mean, throughout the history of Dethklok, you know, they've always had like a really contentious relationship with their fans. They've always been irritated by their own popularity, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And it's a funny thing because the fan and band dynamic is a tricky relationship, you know, especially and the movie is about that too. There's a little bit of that in there too about the, you know, where were we when this show started and where are we now, you know? And the only thing I can think that Dethklok would call their fans are some kind of horrible insults, like dildos or something like that. But we don't really have a
Dildos.
nickname other than, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we don't really have a nickname for the fans. But or the gears and the wheel of the clock, you know.
Oh, there you go.
That's something else, you know.
Yeah. My name's Eddie Torres, so I'm thinking of calling my fans like the extra testicles, like that Cheech and
Nice.
Chong movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
man.
awesome.
Do you have a favorite episode of Metalocalypse?
You know, it's usually the most recent thing I've done. So it's either this movie or again, the challenge of doing a rock opera musical. It's so bizarre. No one asked for any of this stuff, but we just gave it all to them from the first episode until now. And we just always kind of like follow what is compelling or interesting to us. So those things are interesting. Doing the rock opera was an interesting challenge because we didn't have a lot of time, and all we had was like creativity and in my little recording studio where I go away for a month and I come back with like, here it is. I'm tired, I'm sweaty, but I wrote the rock opera. Now I got to get like Gene Hoglan in here and get a 50-piece orchestra in here, and so those bigger trying to expand it is something that I'm interested in. Trying to make it bigger than it was before, and this movie is a favorite because we've got to make it just feel more interesting. There's a moodiness, an interesting kind of just just tone about this whole thing that it hasn't gotten to be yet because it is the big finish.
True, true.
The Viking funeral, yeah.
Are we going to see the Metalocalypse, or is it going to be prevented per the
Exactly. What's going to
destiny?
happen? Exactly. That's the question. What will happen? You have to watch to find out.
Yeah, man. You also had, not to talk about, we're here to talk about Metalocalypse, but you also had Galaktikon a while back. And have you
Yeah.
considered making that an animated series? Because I know you did comics.
Yeah, I did do comics. And in fact, that comic journey kind of like I learned a lot and I definitely incorporated, you know, I was learning from really great comic book artists and I was, you know, figuring out a lot of cool stuff from making Galacticon the comic book. And I did learn a lot of new storytelling tricks from that I think do end up in the movie too. There's a lot of like cool things you can do in panels and to tell story, to truncate things and to really kind of fold them into like a cool passage, you know, a cool sequence. So doing something with Galacticon has always been interesting to me because again, um, there is a musical element and there's a storytelling element and there's a central character. but it'd be fun to really explore that and get that up on its feet. I've got a lot of cool things that I'm interested in doing, and they usually do involve music and storytelling. You know, from feature film ideas to getting into the a darker place like horror films and stuff with music and with being a director. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking forward to in the future. It's like, how do I do what I haven't done? How do I bring something new to the table that that both acknowledges music and storytelling?
Yeah, we don't get a lot of that anymore. I mean, growing up, one of the most impactful films in my life was The Wall from Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah,
You
which
know,
is one of the greatest movies of all time. It's so much cool storytelling. It was directed incredibly. The music is insane. But I was interested in all that stuff too growing up. So I'd see The Wall, I'd see Tommy from The Who,
Mhm.
I'd see even Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff from like Jesus Christ Superstar
Yeah,
to Evita. All those things have such interesting music, and they because the music's so interesting, I start paying attention to the story, and I'm starting to, you know, follow the story of Evita Peron, a poor farm girl who came into world recognition when she became the first lady of Argentina. Why do I know about this? Because the music's industry, because the music's interesting.
yeah, yeah. I love those. It's weird. I'm kind of a weird person with that because like The Wall's great, and like you said, The Who, Tommy. I
Yeah,
love that element, but I have a hard time with musicals. Like, there's only a
it depends what you're
handful.
watching,
Yeah, there's only a
but
handful I can handle.
yeah, and some musicals have better music than others. But if you see something like I don't know, if you hadn't seen the Book of Mormon, with
Oh yeah,
Trey and Matt from South Park, to me, that is just so perfectly honed and worked out and intelligent and musical and funny, and it's it's a real work of art. It's really cool and it just makes you laugh like crazy. So I like that stuff. But then again, I go back to like King Diamond. What is he doing but telling me creepy stories, a full story on an entire record? How is that not in the same category
that's
as
true.
Jesus Christ Superstar, Tommy, The Wall, all that stuff? It really feels like that's the same thing. I think telling story with music is quite compelling. Plus, it makes the whole job just a little bit easier if you've got one big narrative rather than an anthology of a hundred little tiny stories, which is hard to do, but also very exciting. Where I think of like, what are my favorite records? Does every single song have to do with the other one? No, but it's an overall mood and an overall feeling. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. It's all coming from the same place, but it's not a story, but it's a mood and it's an overall feeling that that record has. And so, yeah, I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. Uh, and music and storytelling are kind of the same thing.
True. Yeah, yeah. That's always been the what attracted me to metal and that the many subgenres of metal is that it
Yeah.
felt more like storytelling than like your average pop music or your hip hop songs where the musicality is great, whatever, but there's nothing that's engaging in there where I'm like studying lyrics or studying the
Yeah, trying to
artwork on the
uncover
record.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something that happens, that's true. That's part of like the curiosity of heavy metal, the artwork on the cover, like opening up an Iron Maiden record and just figuring out what is this dark world? Who is this character? What is happening here? I need to know more. I've only got a sliver of information. I'm going to become a detective and figure out the rest. And it's really inspiring and really exciting. I think about that. It's funny, theatrical heavy metal, movies, heavy metal. I think some of the best heavy metal derived from movies. Your death becomes her t-shirt is a funny example, but I don't think Metallica in one would have been. I mean, that is directly related to Johnny Got His Gun with Jason Robards, and it's so James Hetfield would watch movies and be inspired. Creeping Death is from the Ten Commandments.
Hmm.
Anthrax is all like they're referencing like Scott Ian's a movie nerd and a book nerd, and he's referencing Stephen King all the time, and he's referencing movies and ideas and Judge Dredd and comic book characters and all kinds of stuff. The Stand, all that stuff. There's so much music and movie, heavy metal and and movie stuff that kind of comes together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let me ask you this: do you feel that would you want to see metal being more of like more popular, like, or does that take away all the mystique? Like, if we were talking like Dethklok is at the level of like Taylor Swift, you know what I'm saying, where they do a
Right,
whole
right, right.
week of shows in L.A. Like, do you even want that? Sometimes I think about it. I'm
Uh,
like, I wish the whole world loved metal, but then it wouldn't be as special.
yeah.
You know?
I know. Well, I think that's a funny notion. I'm always thinking I know how important metal is. I just know how I don't need to prove it to anybody else. I only need to have that conversation with people who already know. And then fortunately, one thing about Death Metalocalypse, the TV show, is that through this interview cycle, I've been talking to people who were like, 6 years old when the show came out, and now they're like they've grown up. They didn't know what heavy metal was, but I see them now. They've got long hair and tattoos, and they're wearing like, you know, t-shirts where you can't read anything,
Yeah, like my
and
hat.
so their whole
Hmm.
life is heavy metal now. Yeah, your hat, exactly. So, but all that stuff I'm thinking about that it's nice to influence other people because you and I both know how important that thing is. You know how important it is to discover it and what we get out of it, and that I think is an important thing to kind of be evangelical about. To go and knock on people's doors and go, "Have you heard about heavy metal? It might just change your life." Because I know how important it is to me, and I'm sure it's gotten you through good times, bad times, whatever. There's something empowering about it. There's something relaxing about the heaviness. There's something badass about it. There's just a feeling that you can't get from any other music. There's nothing as aggressive or intense or subterranean or repugnant like this. Stuff the same reasons I love horror movies. There's nothing else gives me that feeling. And if more people know about it, great. And that Taylor Swift thing is like right out of the pages of Dethklok. But
Yeah.
but Dethklok would be Dethklok, and Taylor Swift is like what they're saying that she may have raked in over 2 billion from her world tour. It is bonkers
Wild.
how popular, but obviously there's something that people are all getting out of that. That is not just funning over something. They get something emotionally out of it. It's like when Billie Eilish was out there. I remember hearing about Billie Eilish, and seeing that she's incredibly popular. And I got curious at some point. I was very late to the game, but I was asking myself, what are people getting out of this? And I was seeing it, and I was like, oh, I see. There's this kind of melancholic gorgeousness, this romantic melancholia that's happening in her music, and people are touched and they feel it strongly. And um, and so yeah, so I mean, everyone's got their own thing, and there is I don't know. All I can do is say check out heavy metal if you haven't. If my buddy hadn't shown me like who Slayer was all those years ago, I wouldn't have stepped across the threshold into the darkness and found like something that pertains to my personality and something that was as exciting.
Yeah. No, and I give them props too. I've seen like Billie Eilish rocking metal shirts,
Oh
and
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of pop artists are rocking metal shirts and stuff. And
yeah,
some of the gatekeeper elitists are like, oh, they don't even name me three songs. Like, they get all mad about it.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
no, man, whatever. Get the word out. I don't care how you do
Yeah,
it.
get the word out. I mean, that's the cool thing about heavy metal, really, is that it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. And the way to join the club is just to buy a ticket to a show and be there. And everyone knows if you go to a Slayer show, no one's checking to see if you're a poser or not. You're just there to enjoy the music, and you're in the club, because you took an interest.
Yeah, yeah. Let me put you on the spot. Mount Rushmore of death metal.
Oh, geez. I mean, here's what I'll say about this is that I'm no heavy metal expert. I just know what I've come across, and there's a lot of stuff that I haven't come across. But I know that there's some stuff that really kind of gets me excited, and there's a lot more that I haven't even heard. So I always go back to Cannibal Corpse as far as death metal, and just their whole entire oeuvre from beginning to end. I think is definitely one of the most intense death metal experiences. And I think now they just keep on bringing information, like interesting interest. They keep making it interesting, is what I'm saying, and they
Yeah,
keep challenging themselves. They are hard workers, and they are magical musicians, I think. I think about them. I love Nile too, as far as like death metal too. It's really technical. It's really like they're what is it? The Vitriolic Rites, I think, is one of the records that I was influenced a lot by that and this new Deathklok record too. I just
nice.
think they're bonkers. They're so creative. So that's the thing is you get these people that are kind of there's that punk rock element, there's that grindy element, and there's also major precision based riffage going on too. So you
Yeah,
get this whole thing and you get all this aggression and creativity and just really great, kind of dynamic range between parts. Like one's collected and one of them's more open and one of them's tighter and one of them's more open. And it just keeps the song moving forward. So I think those guys, I think like bands like Aeon are really cool too. But so I don't know. Those are the things I think of, but I don't know if I have Mount Rushmore or I don't know who replaces George Washington or who's,
Ah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know who it is, but what do you think? What do you got for yours?
Ooh, man. I mean,
See, it's hard. It's hard to answer.
yeah. I mean, Cannibal Corpse for sure is definitely up on that list for me,
Yeah,
all the way on the top. I would say George
yeah,
Washington. I mean,
yeah,
Death. I'm obviously wearing the shirt, but
yeah. Death, obviously, yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's rough, man. Like I'll even throw in even a newer band that I think eventually will be looked upon that way, which is Behemoth. I think Behemoth is.
Behemoth, yeah. Oh man, I've logged a lot of hours with Behemoth, and Behemoth has their own sound,
Mhm.
totally sculpted out their own little piece of the sidewalk in the whole death metal world.
And talk about theatrical and visual and all of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very very much so.
It's a real performer. Yeah,
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about stand up too. I mean, I saw you
yeah.
used to do stand up. Are you still? Is that something you still want to do more of? Like after you do all this crazy music stuff?
I haven't, I was doing a lot of it for a while, and I never really have a goal with stand up. It's really interesting. It's just something. It's almost to me like going to the gym, for like it's how you go to the gym and you kind of punish yourself.
Yeah.
You walk away and you're like sore. You're like, oh
Yeah.
no. So that's how I feel with stand up. Is it's really like I'll do it sometimes when I really want to just challenge myself like crazy. I'll go on a run of doing it, and I'm not that interested in having a special. I'm not that interested in touring, so I'm always doing it pretty much for myself, just trying to kind of just get better at it, just for it's like playing guitar. If I hadn't discovered Metalocalypse and figured this thing out, I would still be playing guitar. And I don't know that I'd be putting out records or anything, but I'd be playing guitar because it's a lifelong relationship, and I want to keep on getting better on terms that I think are important. So I even like think about like, okay, this has all been like I have a lot of work to do. There's work guitar and there's play guitar. So like I think I have a lot of work. I got to go with, my sledgehammer and hit, iron rails and then I got to go in for brain surgery and play all these sweepy Swiss guard licks and stuff like that. So I always think like that, but that's work. I got to do that. And then I get to earn some time where I play for myself. And what does that look like? It's me trying to move the ball forward in my understanding of the world of harmony and melody, and how do I keep pushing the envelope into places that I think are interesting and the fusion world and all that stuff. And I think that's the same thing with stand up is when I'm interested, I'm interested. When I'm not, I'm not. But I don't look at it as a revenue source. I look at it as like same thing like if for acting, I would love to just be in a play just to take up the challenge of acting, not to become a famous actor, but because the challenge of acting is really, really exciting and really fun and daunting and terrifying, just like stand up is, just like
Yeah.
performing live music is. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And that's and it took me a while to even realize like I'm not trying to do an hour special. I don't know if I've got something I need to say to an audience in an hour. What everything I'm saying, I'd rather say with a TV show or with music. So I like it. I think it's taught me a great deal about being in front of an audience and
Oh yeah.
understanding, uh, how it's, the psychology of an audience, what they're really there for, and what I'm really there for, and how do we meet in the middle to make sure that everyone gets something out of this night. Um, and just delivering a joke, being able to stand up in front of people and not be frightened and think clearly on stage. That's all stuff that I think I needed to do stand up throughout my life because my natural state is pretty introverted naturally. That's who I've been my whole life, a pretty quiet dude who does not like make a lot of noise. And I needed to get on stage and basically scare myself into being calm, to like
Hmm.
develop calluses to understand how to think clearly when something's not going well, how to shift gears and move and work with a huge group of people, and that helps me as a director. It helps me as a communicator, and I know that they do that in like corporations. They make people take
Oh yeah.
stand up classes so they can get in front of 500 people and all that stuff. But I know that all of those little things that I'm kind of like the wax on wax off of these kind of little treacherous things, they all help me in what I ultimately want to do, which is what I did, which is talk to big groups about creative things and get everyone on the same page in a big project like a movie.
Yeah, man. Yeah, comedy's humbling, man. I've recently
Oh
gotten
yeah.
into it now. Like I've been
Oh
around,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I've been around it for years. I've been, I was hosting a show at the Comedy Store, a podcast about pro wrestling. So it wasn't really, I wasn't doing comedy, but I was involved. I was around,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then finally
yeah.
dove in head first. And it's so humbling because in my head, I'm like, I've been in a band for 10 years. I can, I'll be fine. And then you get up there and it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, but I can't blame it on the guitar player for not being in tune. I
Yep,
can't
yep, yep,
blame it on the
yeah.
drummer for being off. It's all you. It's
Yeah.
all, and
Yeah.
it's a really, it brings you back down to earth. Like, oh yeah, this is hard. This is challenging, and I like that perspective of it where, you're not doing it like you said, a revenue stream. It's just something to challenge yourself with to make yourself a better person,
Or a better artist,
a better
I don't know if
artist.
I'm a better person on the other side of it because sometimes you're like, like there's so many times on stage where you're just trying to make stuff work and yeah, like you said, it's humbling. And then there were times where I would be doing stand up where I'd be like, oh, I've gotten to that place where it's second nature. Just like I'm about to go on tour. When was the last time I played guitar live? It's been a year ago, which is a good amount of time.
Yeah,
But I want at some point you're on tour and you're just, you know what it's all second nature. You don't even think anymore. It just starts happening, right? And that happened with stand up for a while too. So just like when you don't play guitar every day and you don't do stand up every day, those muscles can atrophy. And then it's like going back to the gym and really trying to pick up the same weight you were left off on and try to lift it, and you just end up being really, really sore afterwards.
yeah, absolutely.
But it's a wonderful treachery, and the end result when you find a real comedic artist that can really nail it, it's so exciting. It's so exciting when stand up.
Yeah, man. Well, I know we're running out of time, but before we go, I would be remiss to not bring this up. I just wanted, you and I've never met, but
Hmm.
I was very close with our buddy, our mutual friend, Jon Schnepp. So
Oh yeah,
I just
yeah,
wanted to, bring him up. I wanted to show you the last thing he gave me, actually, which was
yeah.
this. Oh, you can't really see it, kind of
Oh, how cool!
like a.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I still have this, next to my records. So I just wanted to, it was a very
Yeah,
unfortunate and tragic thing, but what a great dude,
yeah.
huh?
He was so funny. Jon Schnepp, I have so many memories. We logged so many hours together working on this show, and I didn't really know him up top. Tommy Blotcher, the co-creator, introduced me to him, and he really like he came with a big warning from the network. They were like, "Oh, Jon Schnepp, you gotta watch out for him. Keep an eye on him," because he worked on Aqua Teen and a bunch of other shows. But I didn't have to really watch out for him because he took to this show and he was a collaborator, and he really added a lot to this world. And he always added some wonderful, weird mutant DNA kind of to this project. Something just strange and messy and interesting and weird. And it was always wonderful to see something. We'd see something that was just kind of out of left field and go, wait a minute, what is that? And John explained this to me. He's like, I don't know. And we go, all right, I think we have to leave that there. It's so weird. We have to keep it there. And we did a lot of stuff. I would push him really hard sometimes, and he didn't like it. And then at the end, we'd see the end result and he'd be like, "Oh, it's good that we did. It's good that whatever we took to get here was worth it because we had a sequence. We would have something that was an okay sequence, but then it would just be a really cool sequence. So it'd be memorable." And so I'd push him a lot, and I was his boss, and so I would drive him kind of insane, and we would drive each other insane. But at the end, he and I really connected on a lot of things, and like movies and stuff, like Dune, like David Lynch stuff, and we would always be referencing it. So you can see lots of Dune references throughout all of Metalocalypse, a lot of David Lynch, and he was just a funny dude, and he was like a gigantic 12-year-old, and
Yeah.
you know, in a huge body, and be loud, he'd be crazy, that had that voice and crazy look. But we did a whole piece on him on in Revolver, and a nice little kind of tribute to him. And there's nobody like Jon Schnepp.
Yeah, man. I hear you. If he's listening up out there somewhere, we still
He's
remember.
around here
We
somewhere.
still remember. And also,
Yeah.
how happy would he have been to have seen this Nicolas Cage as Superman in the Flash, huh?
I know, I know, I know. That I think for John to have discovered that whole to build that documentary and everything. You know it's, the title is so long. The Death of Superman Lives. What happened?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, was really me. I remember him seeing that, and that was kind of like that was Schnepp 2.0, where I was like, oh wow, I'm really impressed with your storytelling skills. The fact that you dug this thing up, and it's deep nerd culture, and you're the right person for this. And it was so cool to see that come to fruition.
Hell yeah. All right, brother. Well, let's plug away. You've got the BabyKlok Tour starting
Yeah,
soon. You've got
starting soon. Yeah,
the movie Army of the Doomstar, Metalocalypse Army of the Doomstar is coming out next week, along with Dethalbum IV and the soundtrack.
yeah.
Anything else you want to plug, talk about before we go?
No, we're going to be on tour with Baby Metal. I'm excited like I said, we've been in the office for a long time. It's going to be nice to have a field trip. So I'm excited to get the ball rolling. I'm excited to to get rehearsing and everything. And yeah, we got a movie and two. I got a movie and two records. So I'd say check out the soundtrack album because I'm really excited by it. Because I love film score. I really think film scores really make a movie. The movie they really add the final mood, the subtext, and everything through melody. And I really had a great time working on it with Bear McCreary's team. Bear McCreary, his team is called Sparks and Shadows, and they helped on Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings show on Amazon.
Oh wow.
Bear's also known for doing Walking Dead. He did Godzilla King of Monsters, where I got to work with Gene Hoglan and play on that soundtrack, play guitar on it, and so yeah, their team worked with me, and we got this really great, fun score that's somewhere between the John Carpenter and like Tangerine Dream and uh, Goblin World, Dario Argento kind of sound meets like Basil Palladores, Conan, and John Barry, kind of like James Bondian with orchestral stuff. We have an orchestra and synthesizers, and it's this big fun thing that I recommend listening to it on its own because it's another part of this project. It really is like kind of the emotional and moody kind of soul of the project in the film score. So that the movie and Dethalbum IV, which gives you the brutality, the comedy and the character, and then the soul. So I think it's all one big piece.
Amazing, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, dude. I've been wanting to do this for many years. We met briefly at like Gorilla Mall during your Galaktikon comic signing,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
since that day,
Awesome.
I'm like, I need to get him on the pod. We need to do this. But I appreciate it. I'm very happy we're finally doing this. I'm happy Metalocalypse is back. Everybody that's watching and listening, make sure to follow Brendon Small on Instagram. But is there a Dethklok one? Is there a Metalocalypse like in
Yeah,
social?
there is a Metalocalypse one. There is like an official one. I don't know exactly what the call letters are because I'm worried. I'm always worried about something else
It'll be in
over
the
social
description.
media.
Yeah.
Social media comes last, yeah. But yeah. So there is a Dethklok Instagram, and there is some stuff on Instagram or Twitter or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
X. That's what it's called now.
X.
X. Anyway.
Yeah,
All right, brother. Thank you so
yeah,
much. Hopefully, we'll see each other somewhere along the road once again.
yeah.
But cheers.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
Later.